How's that? It's Beryl. Beryl Cohen, my kukala. How are you, my darling? No, I don't have time to cook, Cookie. Okay, now listen, are you busy watching Live from the Edge? Are you living under a rock, babe? Yes, it's on now, Live from the Edge, babe. It's all about African brand identity. It's stuff that we need to know because you never know. We might be out on the street one day and then you and I have got to start our own business, God forbid. I know, Kukala. Yeah, look, they've got amazing people on. They've got Caesar Miller. You know, remember him? Yeah, babe, he was a big shot with Pepsi Cola and Colgate. He's one of the former presidents of that. Yes, and they've got Master KG, if you don't mind. But you're such a Nochschlepper. Master KG, babe. Jerusalem. Millions of views. It's taking the whole world by storm, Kokala. Okay, well now they're teaching us how to do business things, babe. African business brands, current trends. Yes, and there's a panel cook happening later, a conversation amongst the whole, like a whole panel thing. Babe, you better, don't have time. I don't have time. People like you irritate me. You need to get out from under that rock and start watching this stuff. Okay, my kokala, all right, I love you, hi. Don't make me come. I wouldn't, because, you know, I'm not a violent person, but I was going to say, I'll come there and smack you with my phone. Okay, my kokala, I'll chat later to you, hi. Okay, love you. Okay, bye now. Bitch.
Welcome. The Edge, excuse me. This is our third online marketing event since the beginning of the lockdown. And the first was crazy. It was full of novelty and surreal, and we felt like we were in a time warp. The second was at a point when people were grappling with remote work, and if you're a mom or a dad, potentially some amateur homeschool as well. So today what we're going to do is we're going to shake things up with conversations about cultural cliches as well as relevance and what they mean to you, the custodians of brands. Everyone says they're connecting with culture, except that most of it is very appropriated or misapplied, or to be honest, it's weighed down with some serious stereotypes. So we're addressing cultural relevance and why it only works if it's driven by authentic engagement and insights and has a sincere regard for people's perspectives. And as Beryl, crazy Beryl, alluded to, we have an exciting lineup of experts. They come from diverse backgrounds from all corners of the earth, as well as different businesses. And they have diverse opinions on building successful brands on the continent, but all of their opinions are very valuable. So just a note from us that we won't be taking any questions, but keep your eyes on the chat for extra information about our speakers. Of course, as they're chatting, please feel free to share their words on the socials. The event hashtag, as well as our social channels, are in the chat right now. So let's kick off with Neil Davidson, who is based in London, but has worked on the continent for years. The question he's answering for us is, how do outsiders make it work over here?
I'm here to talk to you today about our experience and take on global and local marketing, particularly talking about London to Lagos, connecting London to Lagos, but that is really based on my experience on the agency's behavioural perspective. So we are based in London, but we spend a lot of time in the markets in Africa, and we work very closely with local clients. And so for us, it's like we've got a very strong relationship with the global clients, but we also make a bridge to the local clients. And so for me, it's really important to understand your model. Every model has strength, every model has weaknesses, and it's, you know, grasping that nettle and understanding the why behind your client's model, because I think when you understand that why, you might see their motivations slightly differently. It might be driven by the economics and the ratios of how they have to make a global model work. And for me, one of those things is understanding the 3-year rule. So the 3-year rule for me is year one, you don't know what you don't know when you start in a market and trying to connect with a target audience. Year two, you do know a lot more, and also you know what you don't know yet. Year three, you're hopefully there. Wear that insight lightly. Just because you understand something about an audience doesn't mean you have to communicate it. So in the Czech Republic, as we got to know the consumer, one of the traditions for a Christmas campaign that we discovered was putting a fish scale under dinner guest's plate. Now, that's a really interesting local behaviour. But is that something that you should communicate in advertising? Because is it unique or connective to people who do it year in, year out? Or is it just something that you've discovered? Usually it's the latter. And so when I say connection, I'm really thinking there are more things about us that are common than are not common. And those are the things about family, belonging, life, love. And we as marketing people tend to forget about those. But also seek difference, because of course there are differences. Global isn't the enemy. Bad legacy marketing is. Global doesn't have to be bad when it's done well. I think we just have to ditch a lot of the old assumptions about marketing and be smarter in our models, in our ways of working, and particularly taking a behavioural perspective when we're trying to connect with people that matter. Any campaigns that start with a behavioural focus are more effective than any other starting point, whether that's awareness or attitude change. And I think that's because you're thinking about people and their behaviours straight from the start. It's also more insightful just because of that, because you are thinking about their behaviour you're trying to change, and we think about the barriers and the meaningful mental comparisons that people are making about those behaviours. So for us, connecting London to Lagos has got a lot of history. We've worked with Guinness for over 15 years. Also, Guinness FES has been in Africa for hundreds of years, and it has had media sponsorship with the English Premier League for over 15 years. And that, over time, we have deliberately built our knowledge of different aspects of people and the markets over time with a focused reason to find out that insight, and obviously work with our clients and their research partners to continually understand shifts. And I think the really important thing about football is don't make easy assumptions that an Arsenal supporter in London has got the same reasons and gets the same benefits as an Arsenal supporter in Lagos, because they don't. The starting point is the same. The passion is immense. The knowledge, I would argue, is quite often higher in, say, a Nigerian fan than in the UK. But in terms of what it does for a fan in Lagos, in terms of social identity, social bonding, social release, it's different. And it happens in different contexts. So we are always trying to make that meaningful and make that different rather than just badging football. Where that approach gets us, both strategically and making it happen in the market and executing it properly to connect with the people that we want to connect the brand to.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Get ready, dog. Get ready. Get ready. This be the green light, go. Tires burn the pavement. People want to know where Mace, Poss, and Dave went. Still here, still in your ear with a style so hot, you'll see where all the sun rays went. Legs, arms, and head, all being moved in a frenzy. The blends be all the right cred, meaning credentials. Best of both worlds when we rockin' over pearls and the instrumental. Are you ready? Ready. Set. Jump to the rhythm as hard as you can go. Keep it steady. To the letter, right? Turn it up. We giving the show. But can you rock it like rocket? What you talking about? Space out your mind. But can you rock it like rockets? That's a close encounter of what kind? I'm a disc jockey. When it was time to get it lit, we got it hot like fever. Sick with the talk, passing your receiver. Cardio kingpin. Subjugate the dub play. And you know we can't wait to bring spins. A-star quizzes, A+ the final. Vocals we align, we'll move it all simultaneously over like rocket fuel.
I love what Neil said about commonalities and us being sure that we understand what those commonalities are and be true to the universal commonalities, but that our differences bring so much value as well. I also loved the fact that global isn't the enemy, bad legacy marketing is. So that brings us very nicely to our next segment and speaker, because Unilever has been around for 91 years. In fact, yesterday was its 91st birthday. They have geography and legacy on their side, but also geography and legacy to overcome. And yet they still rank as one of the top 20 most admired brands on the continent. So we want to understand how they do that. So if you can help me welcome Letepu Mataba, who's the Vice President of Home Care for Africa, to tell us how they do it.
Very delighted to be chatting to you today around a very broad topic of building brands that get noticed in Africa. I love talking about Africa. This is my continent, a continent of which I'm very proud of. And who doesn't want to talk about the richest continent in the world? I mean, 80% of the world's platinum comes from Africa. But equally, and quite sadly, as we all know, this is one of the poorest continents in the world. So rich yet so poor. If I look at the contribution, this is a continent with 14% of the world's population and only contributing about 2% GDP to the world. Obviously, this is tiny, but the reason I'm saying is this is a continent where it's a challenge day-to-day living for most of our citizens. And COVID-19, as we know, is not making things any better. For most economies, they were struggling pre-COVID. Now, COVID just means things will be worse. But equally, while it's quite gloom and challenging, COVID just brought, as we all know, 2030 into 2020. So that makes it even more exciting, more colorful, more challenging, more difficult, but also a chance for us to shape the future that we want to see. So exciting times, and Africa cannot be left behind. One of the pertinent stereotypes is that Africa is a country. Africa is not a country. This is a continent with over 3,000 ethnic groups. This is a continent with over 1 billion citizens. This is a continent with over 2,000 languages being spoken. So it's quite diverse. So with that diversity obviously comes in the challenge. How do you break through? How do you make yourself noticed? How do you build a sustainable brand? And I thought for this exercise, I'll pick one of the brands from my portfolio, and I decided to pick Sunlight, which is a brand that has been in existence for over 100 years in Africa. Quite lucky actually to be here. The first one, and this is the most important one, is actually to know your citizen. And you might just ask, how is that even possible when there's just so many and they're all so different, which is true. The first place to start with is looking at all the differences. But the real job and the real nugget is when we go and look for commonalities. And that leads to then the second point, which is then you find the human truth, undisputed human truth. And we found the human truth with the Sunlight citizens, which is really around the fact that, they may be happy working in their homes, but equally they want to thrive and do much better than their circumstances. That is common across the continent. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in Algeria or whether you are in Nigeria. It's the same truth. The third piece is really around product delivery and relevance. One of the misnomers is people thinking that because people are poor, that they can just give them a substandard product that doesn't really deliver on quality. And is it relevant? What do I mean by relevance? Do you get me? And that's a critical piece. Do you understand me? Are you stereotyping me? Or last but not least, are you selling me something at a price that I can afford? So that is the third piece. And, it's very easy said on paper, but to think of magical price points that when you need to hit what it means a very agile cost structure. It means a route to market that's very deliberate and intentional. It means product formulation to match your cost index. It's a whole package. The fourth piece is really around mental and physical availability, which is something that Coca-Cola does so well, and no wonder it's the fourth admired brand in Africa. Tell the consumer in a relevant manner, but make sure that you are available everywhere else. I've seen the mistake of great brands only residing in big cities. And when you step outside of Abidjan or you step into other markets, you don't find the product. BBC World is the #1 most admired media in Africa. It's everywhere. It's in Pidgin English, it's on radio. So that is that whole mental and physical availability that I'm talking to. And then last but not least, which is part of our journey now, is really finding a social tension that the brand can then talk to a very relevant manner. And we refer to this as purpose. If you don't define what your purpose is, your competitors will define it for you. So it is that purpose, and I'm really quite excited about the journey. I'm not talking about the destination. I'm just outlining some of the principles in Africa of really trying to get a winning brand across the continent. And in the last piece, we spoke to women entrepreneurs across the continent, gathered some real nuggets, understanding the market context, to then narrow it down to really wanting to empower African women, because this is the space that Sunlight can genuinely own, and remove them from just being surviving entrepreneurs to being thriving, because research world over does tell us that women actually invest 90% of their income into their families. So in a nutshell, that is the journey that the brand is on, that I really hope will be exciting, fulfilling, and help us to deliver the results.
Thank you so much, Letepu. And I think what's so important about what Letepu is talking about is how extremely important it is to be a very seasoned marketer when you work on this continent. She's talking about last mile delivery. She's talking about pricing that's very deliberate. She's talking about being very purposeful in the work and making sure that you're available, but also understanding that the product needs to be of a standard that is very good for consumers, regardless of how poor they are, especially because as African consumers, we're innovative in the way that we use products. We find 101 ways to use a single product. So you are hardly telling us how to use it. We're definitely going to be telling you all the different ways it can be used. So a better product is always obviously great. And marketing and promoting and advertising to us needs to be very thought out and be culturally relevant so that it speaks to the different consumers, all of those different billions of consumers and different language groups. So that's how you navigate diversity. And I'm very excited that Letepu was able to condense that very quickly. So no stranger to working in some other diverse markets is Cesar Melo. And I'm very excited because he's up next in conversation with our VMLY&R EMEA CEO, Andrew Dimitru.
Welcome, Cesar. It's always good to see you. This is probably one of our furthest distance meetings that we've had, because it's normally they're over coffee or in the meeting room. But I wanted to say welcome and thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. Yeah, you and I go back a long way. I mean, we practically created Red Fuse together. We've done great work together on many continents. And as you say, always a friend. We almost did this in person, face-to-face in Paris. We couldn't get it done, but I feel that you're almost next to me here. Big friend of WPP and VMLY&R. I think you guys do great work, and particularly excited that we're connected with an African audience today, as well as your clients and partners and employees in other parts of the world where I have friends and clients as well. So very happy to be here and happy to help.
Yeah, thank you. So, look, Cesar, I want to kick off this question. Obviously, you have experience. You've put probably more products in households around the world than most people that I know. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about brand marketing today, brand authenticity today. And I know that you've been a big proponent over the years of really getting close to consumers and really getting to know them, getting real insights from them. Can you talk a little bit about why that's so important for marketers in today's environment, particularly thinking about Africa as well?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's close to my heart. You and I remember meetings you and I had walking around supermarkets or close to consumer homes. I've always believed that you must stay close to your audience in any way you can. And I think not only that continues to be important, I think it's more important than ever before for many reasons. One, audiences have become more diverse, even within a country, even within an age group, even within these artificial groups we've created, such as millennials or moms. There's so much fragmentation of that audience's perceptions, values, preferences that getting close to them is even more important than ever. The second reason is that those audiences change very quickly. Perceptions, preferences, attitudes change today at a pace they have never changed before. Some of that has to do with access to information on social media. Some of that has to do with just the pace in which the world lives, not only in the developed world, but increasingly so, even so more so, in markets such as Nigeria or South Africa or Zambia. Consumer moves at a speed that makes you impossible to do business if you do not stay close to them. I think the third reason, perhaps the most exciting reason, is that audiences now expect it. The days of creating content and putting it out there for consumers to see it, sitting on a couch, watching TV and react to it, are gone. The audiences today, brands today, are created by interacting with consumers on an ongoing basis. Audiences expect that. And the younger the audience, the more they expect that. But I have to say, even audiences as late as the 70s nowadays want to interact with the brand, and therefore staying close to the audience is essential.
Yeah, thanks. And so I think, obviously staying close to the audience has come more and more challenging these days. You mentioned speed, agility, the changing perceptions within groups. You also you brought me back a little bit to walking the stores and doing in-store checks back in the day. But given the fact that things are changing so rapidly now, from a client's point of view, what do you do and what techniques do you use to stay close to those audiences?
Yeah, all of them. I continue to believe that, and even having business discussions with colleagues at work, when I was at PepsiCo or Mondelez or Colgate or Foster Grant, there's no better place to have those conversations that close to a consumer, a shopper in the store or a consumer home. It's amazing what you learn. I cannot remember a consumer visit or store visit where I have not learned something. So you need to do those. No matter how much technology you have in your hands, you got to continue to press the flesh, to be close to consumers on a personal level. That doesn't change. And then you need the typical market research techniques, those still around, qualitative research and a ton of quantitative research that continues to get better. Yeah, the beauty is that nowadays you have technologies, and I have to say, one of the reasons why I invested in VMLY is the ability to get feedback from audiences instantly. You go on air through any digital mean, and you begin to immediately download performance data and connect that with the reason why those content pieces are performing. So I think a combination of all of those. I think that now you have technologies that allows you to be on top of that audience and getting that feedback constantly. I think the beauty of now being able to create content with terrific agencies such as the one you lead so well, but then exploiting that content with pieces that surround that consumer, and equally importantly, getting that insight immediately through technologies such as VMLY, I think is fascinating. There's more information audiences today than ever before.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, as we've gotten closer to consumers, you and I think we both lived through the world where we create global campaigns for everybody to creating local campaigns for bespoke audiences. And one of the things that I think marketers are toying with at the moment is, do borders really matter when they define audiences, or is it more about subcultures that go across countries or groups? What's your perspective on that?
That's a very passionate topic. I've had the luxury, as you know, working in global roles as well as local roles in all kinds of industries. And I remain convinced that the best content that engages an audience is local. That doesn't mean that campaigns have to be local. I firmly believe that Nirvana, the best outcome is a global campaign idea for a brand that is global or intends to be global, then augmented at the local level with content that surrounds that consumer. A consumer in Cape Town is very different from a consumer in Kinshasa. A consumer in Europe is very different from a consumer in China, but there's some overriding values that connect. And depending on the category, you may need to tailor more or less. I remember in my toothbrush days, it was relatively easy, and you helped me with some of those to create a campaign, even a TV spot that could just as well in Thailand versus Brazil. The more you go away from such a standardized industry, you go into food. Food requires a lot more local content, and brands start at the local level. That doesn't mean that you have to start from scratch in every country. It means that you take a global campaign idea, and I can think about great stuff done for some of the brands I've worked on, but then you connect with that local audience with something that is relevant for them. Family, culture, local culture, events that are very local, language obviously, and even within languages, cultural nuances that are different. The Arabic dialect from Morocco is very different from Cairo. So even connecting at that level is what makes content powerful.
Cesar, you mentioned culture. I mean, for us at VMLY&R, we really believe in connecting with culture, and that's how brands are built today in modern society. In any of your previous roles, have you had definitions of culture that you found insightful or that you want to share with us and the group?
That's a great question. Hotly debated through history. You even talk about organizational culture and what that means. Going back to my high school days, culture is everything that man does. And so art, folklore, food, music is increasingly an important part of culture. I do think that the birth of culture is the nucleus of the family. I think that's where culture is really created and preserved. Values that start there. Whatever family structure is prevalent in that society, single homes to multiple homes to even families with multiple wives, all of those are families. And I think the family remains where culture is nurtured and then from there you go into all the other things that are very important. I think food is an incredibly important part of culture. I've got to understand that better. I think in my last 5 years through my work at Mondelez and PepsiCo, and then obviously music. You go to places like Nigeria, you cannot connect with that population without music. And you and I did some work in Latam where that is increasingly has always been very important. So music is important, religion of course, but family I think is where culture starts and gets preserved.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's different cultural groups, and now with social media, those cultural groups have an opportunity to connect across borders or find similarities across countries, which is always takes us, and you touched upon it a little bit earlier about global marketing campaigns. So there's always Nirvana is the global marketing campaign, but when you talk about socioeconomic groups, they vary. When you talk about cultural groups, they vary. In your opinion, and this is a personal opinion, do you think that global marketing campaigns can work, and why or not?
I remember having a chat with Ramon LaGuardia, a good friend now, CEO of PepsiCo, and soon after I joined his team, and having exactly that debate over lunch. And I think I don't know if we ever agreed 100%, but we did agree that the best campaigns are local, and that means that it has to connect at the local level, and that's how brands, especially food, are created. However, that the best companies manage to do that as well as orchestrating an umbrella idea that can be global. And the most powerful brands in the world have achieved that. You and I can think about hundreds of brands that have done that really well. The brands that miss it either try to go too far into thinking that one global content, not an idea, but a global piece of content can work everywhere, or the other extreme, thinking that you need to start from scratch every time, you need to engage a local audience. And I think over time, marketers, myself included, perhaps have exaggerated our differences, country to country and even within a country. And some other marketers have overemphasized their similarities. And I think the best marketers, the smartest marketers, understand that you got to do both. The most powerful brands will have an overarching campaign idea that can be global, if that company aspires for that brand to be global, but that in a very nimble way finds content that engages at the local level, so the brand leaves at the local level in a way that is powerful.
Yeah, quite often the examples that I like to use are the big global companies that always, when you ask someone in India, they think it's an Indian brand. When you ask someone in Mexico, they think it's a Mexican brand. And they're real good examples that big companies, such the ones that you've worked with, are able to balance those two things. You know, big global idea, same name, but really local nuance that delivers it. So I guess I have one question, the question that I ask all my clients. Given today's environment, social media coming at you 1,000 miles an hour, you know, you've got content coming at you every which way, on your mobile, on your computer, whether you're driving to work, whether you're at home, you've probably got two screens over. Where's the biggest bang for your buck you can think you can achieve with any of your marketing campaigns today?
Great question. I think the starting point is getting close to your consumer. I think if you understand your consumer, you have half the battle won. And I cannot stress that enough. We talked before about, doesn't have to be sophisticated market techniques. Just walk the stores, talk to consumers, and then use whatever technique allows you to get nimble, insight, and quickly. And then understand what touches that audience before you develop content. Back in my days at Mondelez, we talked about total connections planning. We brought that to PepsiCo, and it remains important. It's about looking at that consumer and understanding what touches that consumer around the day, and then developing content for that touch point that is relevant, and then surrounding that consumer with the content that's most relevant, and then you find the most cost-effective way to leverage that out. I'll use one example that I never forget. One of my favorite brands in the PepsiCo portfolio is a baby food brand in Russia called Agusha. And I learned so much from that team. They understood that the most important moment for that mom was when the baby was born, and that the ride from the hospital to the house was a key touch point for that woman. She's emotional, she's carrying that baby home. Agusha understood that getting to that mom at that time, protecting her in that ride, was essential. So Agusha would pay for that ride in a very safe way. Whenever we debated budgets with that team, that's the money they wanted to preserve. So we could cut the TV budget, but that was a touch point and that to me is a great example of understanding the touch points that surround a consumer, and then developing content for that touch point, as opposed to starting with all right, I just want a TV for this brand, and then let me see what else I can throw. And today we have techniques that allow you to develop content for that touch point. The platforms that, even social media, the platforms that are dominant in Europe aren't the most prevalent in Russia or in Africa. And so finding the platform that surrounds the consumer in your market and then developing content for that is key. I've seen brands taking a TV spot and jamming it into a Facebook feed, and then using the same for Snapchat, and then trying to do the same for a TikTok ad, and that doesn't work. I mean, again, VMLY is has a great ability to do that. Working with you develop this great campaign idea that can be an overarching global idea, and then we work together to find the content that surrounds the consumer in the local market in a way that the brand remains strong, but that consumer is engaged. To me, that's how you get the biggest bang for the buck. I was just talking to a colleague in Australia for a brand for whom the most important touch point is sampling. And so that's the money in a year where things are tough. The money he's preserving is that sampling. So understanding that key touch point, and then starting there and surrounding that consumer increasingly in an nimble way, to me is key.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we say the same similar things. We talk about brand authenticity. What is the brand's authentic place to live? Where is it the cultural part we can tap into? Whether it's the ride home or whether it's the sampling, I think it's really important that brands find that brand authenticity at a local level in culture and able to deliver.
You showed me some examples. I remember you and I talking last year when I was trying to do something different in one of my regions. You remember that? And one of the things that impressed me about VMLY&R was that you didn't come to me with a predetermined content form. You came to me with a problem to be solved. I mean, I came to that problem, and you came to me with solutions to that problem based on whatever content. And it could be music, it could be in store, or it could be a piece of content in social media, or even a TV spot if that works for that occasion. I think you guys have that ingrained in the way you think, and that makes you a terrific agency.
Well, thank you for that. And I guess it's a great time to end. Hopefully next time, Cesar, I owe you a beer or a glass of wine in Paris for sure. And I wanted to say thank you for taking the time to everybody at Live from the Edge. And hopefully next time, all things permitted, maybe we could also see you guys in person. So
I look forward to that. And let's promise each other that one of those drinks will be in Africa.
Agreed. Let's do that.
Thank you so much to Andrew and Cesar, and of course we're looking forward to hosting them. I am looking for any excuse, honestly. I'm yearning for a drink anywhere from Abidjan to Lagos to Kigali to even Maseru around the corner from here in Johannesburg, just to be able to travel again and to see this beautiful continent. And I really love the conversation that Andrew and Cesar had around connecting with a consumer. And I think the last example that he used around the baby food and the example in Russia is about how you need to trust your local teams to tell you which moments you need to preserve, which touch points with your consumers are so important to preserve in order to maintain that integrity in your communications. So thank you so much for that. But one of the things that's very complex about our continent is being able to do business here, and not just marketing business, although that's very important in being able to get our communication across. And so I'd like us to cross to Diana, and she knows the business vibe of this continent like the back of her hand. She's very experienced and has been doing this for a long time, and she's here to share some of the most important things to consider when tackling the African market. So here's Diana Games.
I think it's fair to say that doing business in Africa is a really complex. There are issues across borders and that are similar in different countries because of the various stages of underdevelopment and poverty. But each country is very much its own kind of terrain, and that has to be something to take into account. You have to break this down to its smallest component parts. I think there's a trend to look as closely as possible at a smaller area. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And people have been saying that for many years. It's not new, but unfortunately, you still get instances where people having a successful model at home doesn't mean that model will succeed in another country, and there's lots of local factors that will affect the success of different models. And we've seen that quite a lot with South African retailers going into other African markets, where they're taking stock that might be popular at home and putting it in countries where people are not quite sure where that stock sits on the value chain. There's a tendency to think that you're competing with other brands that you know or chains of stores that you know. But in fact, in a lot of markets, your real competitors are actually the informal markets, where the prices are much lower. People often smuggle goods through, and even if they don't, they have much lower overheads, whereas you tend to find the South African retailers in the Western-style shopping malls where they're paying a premium. Also the overheads in countries where you have to have generators, you have to supply your own power, you have to import a lot of your goods and so on. So there's a lot of issues there. And I think what happened with, for example, Woolworths, Truworths, and a few others in Nigeria, just as an example, was that people firstly thought that the locals would know the brand, given its success in South Africa. But that brand success doesn't travel. You might get greater recognition of big brands from Europe, so you have to market your goods, and you have to figure out how best to do that in a market, because without brand awareness, if you don't have a product that really stands out and that is unusual or different in some way, it's going to be very difficult to put your head above the parapet in terms of your brand. So people are shopping on price and on brand recognition. So they will pay top dollar for brands they recognize, Adidas, etc., or they will buy at the markets at a much lower price. So to be in the shopping mall at a high price with a bit of a no-name product, that is a difficult place to be. The other thing is to remember the cultural and language differences, where you'll get different regions with different specificities. For example, religion. You might get, using Nigeria as an example again, you have primarily the Muslim north and primarily Christian south. So that would affect how you market certain goods, like, for example, beer. So non-alcoholic goods in the north, alcoholic goods in the south. And also just thinking about particular languages, the look of people in commercials. You can't just assume, that an African is an African. People have a specific look. They recognize themselves in adverts and things. These are not homogenous societies. You're seeing a real shift at the moment to more local brand awareness, and you're seeing a shift towards buying things that are more local. So a lot of successful companies, say Unilever, for example, would have created goods that play to the country itself and its society, while still having the international brand behind it. But many consumers may not know that some of these goods are actually made by a big multinational. But it requires clever marketing. Combine those two things. I think the trick is balancing those aspirations with price. Price is a very, very big factor. You think it's impossible to compete with, for example, KFC, but there is a Nigerian chain, Chicken Republic, which took on KFC and has done very well. I think for a while it certainly did very well in Nigeria, had great brand visibility, and people didn't really know if it was foreign or local some of the time. So that's not necessarily the determinant anymore. People wanted something they recognized, and if it was imported, that signaled a certain level of quality that you could expect and reliability. And I think that is changing, and so there's a big shift toward more local sourcing, even by for example, ShopRite would go into a country and they've improved their local sourcing to almost 80% in some countries. So I think there's a shift away from this obsession with imported goods. People are thinking, well, I like this and it's well priced. Remembering that imports is not just about currency, it's also about the cost of logistics, the long value chain, the cost of getting goods to market and so on. So these are just some of the issues. And just one last thing to think about. When you see numbers, you really need to understand and really do deep due diligence. There's a lot of things that need to be looked at when you analyze that business plan.
Thank you, Diana. And I think the numbers discussion is very important, and especially linked to your earlier point around the informal economy, which is something that I feel a lot of advertisers, a lot of agencies, as well as a lot of marketers underestimate the sophistication of that market and exactly how important it is to take the informal economy seriously. And other than taking the informal economy seriously, there is also a different way of doing business and engaging because of issues of access across the continent. So access is important, but even that lack of access, there's ingenuity that goes into how the continent then thrives according to that. So I read the other day, for example, that despite positive advances, obviously, in financial inclusion on the continent, 95% of all consumer payments in Africa still happen in cash. And so therefore you need mobile services such as those done by MTN to be able to give access to consumers on the ground. So someone who's done a lot of work in understanding the informal banking and financial aspects of the continent is Felix Kamenga, who's from MTN, and he's chatting to Heidi Brewer now about the nexus between financial services, technology, as well as shared value. I'm very interested to hear how their conversation plays out. But Heidi has laid down some conversation rules for him. So what are they, Heidi?
So I'm going to start off by just reading something that when I was researching Felix, I read that he'd said, and he said that, and this is really important, 50% of the country's unbanked remain thinly served, and that it's a prime objective of theirs to offer innovation and disruption in product design and distribution networks and customer engagement. So I work in financial services, and financial inclusion is it's everything to me and to us. Just, Felix, talk a little bit about the idea of product design from the outside in terms of what people need, rather than from the inside out, which happens so often in business.
I think one of the things that we did right from the beginning when we started out mobile money considering that it had actually not succeeded before, was to really look outside before basically thinking of how best we could deliver a product people needed, but actually going out to talk to people. So we spent quite a bit of time speaking to people externally. We traveled the country, and I mean, not just going to the surrounding towns. We went to the Northern Cape, went to KZN, we went to the Eastern Cape. And I'll be honest with you, the feedback and input that we actually got really helped us to hone down in terms of what the customers' pain points were, what were the things that people really needed. And we actually had to scrape a whole lot of features and some of the products that we initially had to design. We simplified the product, we improved upon the user functionality purely from those interactions. So I'm really a really big believer in terms of engaging people and engaging research when you're actually coming up with new designs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's everything. If we think, I like to talk a lot about context and content, and to think about before you get into the nitty gritty, to consider the context, and the context, broadly Africa, and then more narrowly South Africa. And we talked about, looked at Mzansi accounts and bank accounts like that service the previously unbanked and financially excluded for such a long time, and things worked and things didn't. And nowadays, with the, I'm not using that word that I'm not allowed to use, with the bringing together of so many of the disciplines, financial services, technology, and so on, it feels like there's so many offerings. And one doesn't know if this is what people need. Are we really making a difference? Are we really servicing people, not thinly but deeply?
We have a model that basically says pains, gains, and objectives, and really looking at the pains and the potential gains people will have from a specific product in terms of narrowing down and addressing, I would say, USPs, in terms of the user proposition, is in terms of really narrowing down in terms of trying to deliver value to the customer and trying to deliver meaningful, making a meaningful contribution to the way people actually do things with a product. I mean, there are some products that will superficially address a customer's needs, and I think it's very important that you have a first-hand account about what those pain points are. And I really insist in a lot of the product designs that I take even some of the technical people into the field with me to really hear it firsthand, because you really can't put everything in a user requirement documentation, and you really can't put every conversation into a product design document. Now, giving that person the right context and the right perspective from the customer's view really changes and enhances design and product offerings.
And if we think about being in, I mean, there's so much talking about marketing for good now. There's another word that I'm nearly using to now stop myself. But in this current context that we're in, the current markets that we're in, where people are so challenged, the idea of marketing for good and creating business products for good rather than just because it's a cool new invention. How do you keep honest? How do we keep sure that we are being inclusive, that there is uptake, that we're not just producing products so that someone's got another bank card or another app or another, they don't know whether to buy toilet paper from here or from there because they don't remember where to get their points from. How do we keep the integrity of when we create products for inclusion?
I think for me, I use a very simple principle. I say every product and offering has to have a soul. So, and I think that soul should not be purely rooted in terms of, obviously, profit is important, but it will not last if a product doesn't have a soul and a reason for being. So for me, I bring that into every product I design to say, how is this product going to significantly enhance or improve the lives of other people? So it shouldn't be as an afterthought. I mean, trying to come up with, all right, maybe there is a new issue that has cropped up, let's add that in. It is much easier if from the inception you design your marketing campaign or the product to really have a soul and really make a meaningful contribution to society. And I'm fortunate to work in an industry that has made a considerable contribution to basically improving lives. And I think personally, from a personal perspective, I'm happy that my own personal values about trying to make and improve people's lives are aligned to the objectives of the organization. So I'm really excited to have that part. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful way that you've expressed it, to say that your product must have soul. It's the first time I've heard anybody describe that. I mean, it's far more rich than my description. I always say you have to build things with layers like a cake. I think a soul is much more deep than a cake, but I think that's exactly the challenge, is to what's that secret ingredient, that thing, and soul as you're building a product, especially when you're looking at trying to create something that enables inclusivity, is everything. But I know what it's like when you have a vision that's much more than just the sum of its parts, that you have to take loads of people with you on the journey. How do you just keep at that? How do you keep the vision with the soul inside it?
The idea is obviously, commitment. I always say commitment versus compliance. I'm not looking for people who are going to comply. I think for me, that inclusion in terms of having that inclusive conversation, that inclusive discussion in terms of ensuring everybody's heard, ensuring everybody's got an opinion, and really showing them the big picture in terms of understanding what it is you're actually trying to create. And to be honest with you, I think everybody strives and will associate to being part of something better. I've actually seen that as a common theme wherever I've worked and wherever I've been. People want to improve themselves. People want to they want to be part of something that's really great and beautiful. And I think once you create that platform for people to be able to collaborate and contribute to something beautiful and better, they bring 100% to the party. So for me, it's very important that right at the beginning, we build and shape the objective, create the right culture that basically produces excellence, produce something that is really going to make a meaningful contribution.
So, talking about that secret ingredient, I always say that there's no new thing under the sun. And you alluded to the fact that mobile money hasn't worked, and you referenced it directly. It hasn't worked in South Africa before. And there are very, very few things under the sun, because the minute you create something new, somebody comes along and says, "Oh, that's cool. Let me copy it, replicate it." And in the world of digital, it's even easier to do that these days. What besides the soul do you think we need in business to be able to create sustainable initiatives and products that really do what they say on the box that they're going to do, that we can deliver them in a way that is differentiated and sustainable from that?
I think from my experience, what I've seen is that creativity has now become groupings of, creativity can still be sustained. You don't have to have an original idea to create something, to have something that is creative. And that's really the first part. Not to really write yourself off in terms of having something creative, but the concept of creativity and delivering something that is useful, something that is unique, something that is truly beautiful and people actually see values, it's quite an extensive and laborious process, and may not always be as sexy as it might be portrayed on TV as the light bulb moment. It's really a number of iterations. You have to go through it. I mean, I'm very pedantic about user journeys, for example. I tell my team, all right, we are going to spend time going through how the customer experiences this product or this service over and over until we get to a point where we minimize the number of steps, we've made it intuitive, and we've made sure that it's as frictionless as possible. So that creative process may not be in color, but it might mean us really iterating through the same process over and over and over until we pick up every niggle in the process and make sure that we actually have a smoother process. So for me, it's about iteration and attention to detail and really making sure that the focus and energies are spent understanding when putting yourself in the customer's shoes.
Yeah, you sing from the same hymn book as me, and I love what you're saying about the soft stuff being as important as the hard stuff, the energy, the soul. And the other thing I'm hearing you saying is that you've got to repeat, and you can't get bored, right? You can't get bored. You can't lose focus. So you've got to just stay focused on the journey. And then I'm going to bring my magic wand. I warned Felix that I had a magic wand and I was going to bring it. And I'm going to ask, if I gave you the magic wand, which I will give you like this, and you can pick it up and take it.
Yeah,
and if you had the magic wand now, and you could gift a wish to the audience that are listening now as they go on their journey of creating and marketing and inspiring business in South Africa, to do business for good, to do work for good, what gift would you give them with your magic wand?
I would give them the gift of insight and understanding. All right? I think insights and understanding are usually undervalued because they're so intangible. Right from the onset, it's very important that even in your creative process, in the marketing, whether it's marketing or new product advertising, all right, it's very important that you really have that insights as your North Star and always refer back to it. Always ask yourself, okay, what were the main things I actually understood? And test that against your ideas and what you're really trying to do. And I think you'll be better off, and you produce a better product, and you resonate more with the customer, and you produce products that add value if you basically improve your insights and understanding.
I love that. I think that's fantastic, because in this day of quick turnaround and hurrying to market with things, the time to take to really understand sometimes I think is lost. So thank you for that. That was great. I enjoyed it. You can keep my magic wand. I'm going to get another one. I think the universe needs more magic wands.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you heard me pronounce it Heidi earlier, but it's actually Heidi. And I'm very sensitive about my name. And we know how important and how powerful a name is here on this continent. So it's Heidi. So thank you so much, Heidi and Felix. That was a great chat. And other than great, I think what's really nice about it for me is at VMLY&R, making work that lives and is purposeful, that lives in people's lives is so important to us. So to be able to have a fireside chat like we've had with Felix and Heidi around the fact that there needs to be soul at a product level, to be able to make sure that you iterate and do it over and over and over and over again until the user experience for the consumer is frictionless and as simple as possible is so important and is such fantastic advice. And I love that we've also touched on the social issues that affect so many of our citizens. And so now let's give you a little bit of something interesting with Lily Slapstilly. She doesn't have a magic wand, but she does have a foundation. So here's Lily Slapstilly, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey guys, Lily Slapstilly here. How are you? I'm fine. Guys, thank you so much for having me alive on the edge. I'm going to just tell you my little story about what happened to me during this time over lockdown and what is still going on. I started doing stand-up comedy about 6 months before lockdown and started developing quite a following at my shows. And then suddenly, hello, COVID-19, the end. I suddenly realized that I had no other form of income. All my shows were cancelled, my residency was cancelled, my tour was cancelled. I suddenly had to get smart and I wasn't really sure how I was going to do that. All I do know is how to do comedy. I developed 5 different characters: a surfer, Lynette Tosis, Ramon Tosis, Beryl Cohen, and myself, which is a character. And I just started posting these characters on Facebook just to keep Lily's page alive and hopefully drive people to my show once lockdown was finished. When I realized that lockdown was never going to finish as quick as we needed it to, I came up with this concept of doing an online auction. Advertising this auction, I realized how important it was that the contributors or sponsors that were giving me items for the auctions, which really were pretty much all South African stuff. People who have developed skin products, local designers, homeware, baked goods, whatever I could put on the auction that I thought would bring some money towards my foundation, clever hat, that's me, my handbag. It's basically for my handbag. People really loved the backstory. Other brands started noticing, wow, Madam does quite a little bit of advertising. So now I'm in my 4th auction. I've had my 4th auction. What I have realized very briskly is that the branding is vital. I realized by default through the audience that this is a brand that even the fact that Lily always wears some kind of a headband, which is really just to keep my wig on, when I received fan art, this headband became a thing. Even the catchphrases, Lily's catchphrase is, how are you? I'm fine. Beryl's catchphrase is, I'm not a violent person. Those catchphrases have now turned into merchandise. So a photograph of my beak saying, how are you? I'm fine, is what people are paying money for. So it's all brand related, and it's literally happened by default. One thing that I have done was understand how the algorithms work. Algorithms are something I knew nothing about, but I couldn't understand why some of my videos would only receive 300-400 views and other videos would be receiving some 70,000-80,000 views. And all you do is you type in algorithm South Africa during COVID for Instagram, and they will Google will tell you exactly when to post, what times of the day and week get the highest traffic. That is vital. What I've also learned to do is engage with my public, engage with your clients, learn to find out what it is they're looking for, saying thank you, keep them enthused and excited about your brand and any new develops that you might have moving forward. And also titling your video or your product or whatever it is you're selling, the title needs to be exactly what it is. Say what it is. Don't get cryptic. I used to try and be all sassy and cryptic, like just sort of go, poison as a title. Now I will actually explain exactly what's going to be in the video. That makes the video or whatever you're selling a lot more clickable, honorable, if that's even an English phrase. What's happened now is that my followers are from all over the world. South Africa is a great place, and we have so many expats all over the world that just hang for whatever is South African and will support. It's been an amazing journey. I'm still learning every single day, but one thing that I've stuck to, and I will continue to stick to this, is gratitude without attitude. That's become my hashtag. Guys, I wish you so much luck with your business endeavors, and stay focused and be proud to be authentically African.
Thank you so much, Lily. Lily at least has her headbands are merchandise, and she's just using up their wig. I'm using mine today to hide a bad hair day. It's COVID, guys. You know, it's life. So thank you so much for that, Lily. Authenticity is absolutely what wins consumers' hearts, minds, and wallets. Even Lily's purse, obviously. But now I'd like us to hear from Jocelyn Cooper, who is in Brooklyn, but is going to be here with us today. She's a 30-year veteran of the music industry. She has turned a lifelong love of music into a dynamic career that's had her discovering and growing some of the biggest names in global music. I think it's a wonderful switch from Lily to Jocelyn. She is the co-founder of Afropunk. It's the #1 destination for alternative Black culture all over the world. She's at home in Brooklyn, but she's here with us today to tell us a little bit about her journey with African music.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about the influence of the African continent on culture. I'm going to give you a little background about me and the influence of particularly South Africa on the work that I do and the work that my partner and I have done. I started working in the music business in the 90s. And I worked for a record company and sort of worked my way up through the ranks in music publishing, and also working as the head of A&R for Universal Records. So I signed a couple of really cool artists. One of the biggest was Cash Money Records. And out of Cash Money has come Lil Wayne and also Drake and Nicki Minaj and some other really cool artists. I started out in music publishing, but then went back to music publishing after working in the record business and heading up the A&R department at Universal for 10 years, and have my own publishing company and signed an artist named D'Angelo, and worked with Raphael Sadiq and some other really cool artists, and then went on to work with Beyonce and Sean Garrett from Hitco Music. And from that, I met my partner, Matthew Morgan, who is the founder of Afropunk, and also the new venture that he and I have started, a creative agency. And we went on the journey of growing Afropunk globally. We started in Brooklyn and then went to Paris. And then from Paris to Johannesburg, South Africa, and then Atlanta and Brazil, and in Dakar and Senegal. And one of the amazing things about being a part of Afropunk has been the opportunity to travel and to experience culture around the world, and particularly on the continent, going to Kenya and to Morocco and to Zimbabwe and to Mauritius and to Senegal and to Togo, and experiencing all of those amazing countries and the culture that has come from those countries, and how those countries have had, and the culture of those countries and the music particularly of those countries has had an impact on our lives, and how we have viewed creativity and just the special, amazing ingenuity and passion and love and dance and joy that has really infected and spread the rest of the world. So it's so amazing to see how the music of West Africa and South Africa and of French-speaking Africa is now taking over the world. It certainly has helped us to grow the brand of our new venture, Multiply. We're hoping to work with artists from all countries, but the ability to really connect people to each other, and the connection of the diaspora has been so powerful. It's been an amazing journey to see the impact that the continent has had on culture, particularly over the last couple of years, and just looking at the last 2 years, from Black Panther to like Black is King this year with Beyonce killing it, and the influence that young people are having first generation and second generation Africans, particularly outside of the continent, when you're looking at London and New York and Paris, and how that is driving the beauty and the hope of the world, and the amazing feeling that I'm hoping will bring the world together.
Thanks so much, Jocelyn. And Jocelyn is so right. From Black is King to Black Panther, we are just doing the most. And we have been doing the most, obviously. I think it's just the world is waking up to our awesome. So much so that, you've got hundreds and millions of views for Jerusalem. You've got, the most famous guy in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo, using it as a backdrop to his engagement party visuals. Master KG has done such an incredible job with that song, and how it's just taken over the world has been so amazing. Focalistic on the other side, if you know him, so he's that guy, and I love the fact that they're going to be in conversation right now with Sia Medani, or better known to those from the 90s as Slicker from Squatter Camp. And they're going to be in conversation about the lowdown on what it takes to make it big locally and globally. So I'd like to hand over right now to Sia and Master KG, as well as Maradona Wapitori.
I know that these two artists literally have a competition on the charts and who's number one and who's number two. Those are the type of conversations these guys have. They're having conversations about charts, like I was number one, or when am I going to remove you from number one or number two? If you can go on the streaming charts right now, they're killing it. And I'm talking about Master KG, the man behind the hit Jerusalem, which has taken the world by storm. Focalistic, a rapper that's found his way to take his skill and make it work in South Africa. In South Africa's most popular youth sound, Amapiano. Amapiano is like a subculture of house music. South Africans have been able to reinterpret house music over the past 20 years and make it palatable for the audience through genres like Kwaito and Gom music. So one could easily probably say that Amapiano is a subculture of Kwaito music, or Kwaito is a subculture of house music. It depends where you are, but there are various interpretations of it. But what Focalistic has done, he's successfully followed in the footsteps of great artists like Hip Hop Pansula, the late great artists like Hip Hop Pansula, and being able to take this American rap and put it in a South African sound, and it sounds so organic. So let's jump into it. Master KG, you've got Jerusalem blowing up the airways and charts globally. While Focalistic, your recent single, Kistar, has stuck in the top 20 of the streaming charts in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Swaziland, Botswana. Don't worry, I've been checking. Don't you worry about a thing, What do you guys think triggered the success of these songs? And also, I just also want to give context. Master KG, you've been all over Africa. Your song has been on the charts in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, in the streaming charts across Africa. What do you guys think triggered the success of these songs? And maybe Master KG, you can tell me what you think really made the song blow up, and then Focalistic, you can follow with your answer.
Yo, thank you so much for this opportunity, by the way, my brother. The song on its own, the melody of the song, the beat, it's just something different, but only not that. I feel like there were a lot of dances, challenges. A lot of people did Jerusalem walk. I remember it was trending here in South Africa. I feel like also the Jerusalem dance that has taken, a big role globally. I feel like it also took a big role in order to make this song, to be big the way it is, because a lot of people, I'm sure they were not aware of the song. But then when you see a lot of people dancing in groups, you ask yourself, what is this song that they're dancing to? Then you end up also wanting to get involved, and then by that you get introduced to the song. So I feel like, making sure we get a nice video, a quality video, and making sure that it's plugged in the right place.
It's amazing, and I'm assuming that the global growth just also made it bigger in South Africa, because you can imagine Jerusalem was probably big in the mass market in South Africa, and then people from the world start seeing it. South Africans start seeing foreigners doing it, and when you see it in Rome, you see it in Spain, and you might be like a guy who's in South Africa who's basically from one of those areas, has relatives there. You start feeling like, yo, why am I missed out? And all of a sudden they also start liking it because of the influence of their families or their relatives in other foreign countries. And all of a sudden you're not only speaking to the mass market, and through that it's almost like the global influence has influenced even what one would call also to a certain extent maybe the white foreign market to a certain extent, the white South African market that has relatives like in foreign places when they start seeing it. And when they've done it in Rome, it's over. It's over. It's over. Focalistic, tell me how what you think triggered Kista to blow up. And Kista is the current single that's really blowing up Focalistic at this point.
With Kista, I think it's kind of like a CV for South Africa. It's kind of like, it sounds like taking us through South Africa. So I think a lot of people, just around Africa, and, obviously the plan is to take it globally. For them, it's a whole different vibe. So I think our secret is always, to tell a unique story, and let it travel the world and watch how different people interpret the song. So for me, it's because it sounded so South African, and so specific.
What is this South African sound for people who basically don't know what it is? Some people are seeing us always dressed like rappers, so they don't know this is what's the South African sound.
So South Africa is a dance nation. You can see that people just want to dance in South Africa, and they have a specific way of dancing as well. And I think the song accommodates that so well. You've seen the move. So for me, I think that's the secret of the song.
Which social media platforms have been the most convenient for you guys to reach your fans as artists? Master KG, you can kick it off.
I would say Facebook, the old G, Facebook. First Facebook, I feel like, that's where every time, I feel like I connect with my fans more. Those fans that were with you from the start, coming up now. So I feel like Facebook is the way to go.
What do you think has been the secret for your social media platforms for you, Focalistic?
For me, it's a three-headed dragon. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, and there's Twitter, and they're all equally important for me, But obviously, as Master KG spoke about, when you're dropping new music, you always have to pick, where to go, to premiere the song. And I think for me, it has been Instagram. For me, Instagram has been a place where, I've been known for going live in the wee hours, and that's kind of like started a culture of exclusive music, and your fans just getting to interact with you more, and you putting it on social media means that later in the world you can get your 5 million views. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's why I'm saying all three, but definitely for new music, I'd use Instagram.
Focalistic to a certain extent, even though you have a South African sound, your music is still, one would still see you as more an urban kind of city kind of positioning. Your image, everything about you is still is very much like urban. And when I look at Master KG, the music is mass. It's mass market. It's super, super mass market. It's literally like the mass consumer who possibly are on Facebook. And that's why Master KG's success has also been so important, because it's almost like the people in the mass market have seen one of their people take this thing to the world. And that's been incredible. So, and almost like you are almost on the glossy side of things with the Instagram Focalistic, and then it kind of spills over to Facebook because the song actually speaks with the masses in that way. So have you guys started using TikTok? Have you seen TikTok doing anything for your music yet?
For me, TikTok has it has been instrumental, but I think I don't think of it as a social media platform, because the songs that they play there, it's kind of like playing like a normal song. So I think, there needs to be some kind of remuneration for an artist, but other than that, it has been, a good promotional tool, because the dances move the song. And, as we've seen with the Jerusalem challenge, it kind of moves it to a bigger market. And yeah, there's just a lot of controversy around it, but yes.
With us being in South Africa, and your success has been very digital, and I think it's the first time in South Africa, in our generation, that a song becomes so big that like it actually crosses over to the world during the digital times of this world. That has never happened before, that a mass market song literally goes to the world, comes back and becomes even bigger. What do you think has been the biggest challenge for your fans who basically like probably can't get the digital access that a lot of people have?
In these days that we're living in now, I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like things are easier because but I feel like, this things like YouTube has that power.
Do you think that all your fans are on digital, or do you feel that there are some people who you got more fans and the digital numbers are not a true reflection of how many fans or people are enjoying your music?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's a lot of people, that are also not on this digital space that are my fans, that, are not able to go on YouTube because of certain reasons like data. We have other people that, are older. My grandfather, sometimes I'll say, no, I'll put the song in a phone and say, hi, man, go on, set a CD,
And to translate that, that's when your grandfather says he wants it on a CD. Are you still selling physical copies? Are there any physical copies that are being sold like CDs?
Yeah, definitely there are, but it's limited, like the game has changed. There's a huge fan basis, and we have different people with different, different likes. They like things the different ways. So sometimes it's better to accommodate them.
We're seeing a lot of artists doing virtual concerts. So what are two things you'd say an African artist needs to do to keep their momentum during this time of COVID-19? What must artists do for people to consistently think of them and people to enjoy them and even be seen in the world, if anything?
I would say that, we must never stop working. I had people, like around May when this thing started, like, they were like, yo, I don't feel like we should drop music now because of this COVID-19, because the music won't pop, like we won't get where it deserves to be. Because now people are closed, bars are closed, clubs are closed. Who's gonna dance to the music, And I disagreed with that because I feel like, now it's also the right time to drop music. People don't really care about TVs, or they're always on the road, they're always in the clubs having fun and other things. Now people, I feel like they're on their phones a lot more than before the pandemic started. So I feel like it's the right time also to like get your music out there.
Is it fair that this is the perfect time to build your brand? You mustn't worry about the club, but if you've got great music, this is the perfect time to build a brand if you got good music.
Yeah, definitely. And also, that Jerusalem, this Jerusalem wave that's currently happening right now, there's a lot of attention in both of us. So that's why, I felt like she has to drop something. That's why, I made sure also to force that my sister, please drop something while this attention also is still too much on us, so that, people we can just carry on going forward.
With that being said, I want to thank you, Master KG. I think my takeouts from this is that basically for you to be able to live or survive as a creative at this time is the time to work as hard as you can to build your brand as a brand building space. But most importantly, also you've also taken that action with the person you featured on the Jerusalem song, and you've taken that person and you said during this brand building space, because the people are paying attention, I think it's an opportunity for you to also drop. So you've kind of really utilized this space to build a brand and actually keep working. So congratulations on that, and thanks for making the time for speaking to us, and good luck, man. We're going to see you in the world.
Thank you. Definitely. Shout out to you guys for giving us this opportunity to express ourselves. It was a beautiful chat. I enjoyed it and I loved it.
Thank you, my brother. Take care.
My gang, yeah. I love those peoples, you know. So we lost Focalistic because of load shedding, as it happens, and as we know, we're load shedding quite badly. So it was just Master KG and Slicker there at the end, but Maradona Okopritori and Master KG. It was such an awesome chat, and it was so wonderful to hear from all of the speakers throughout the day. You know, everything from how important it is for us to be very seasoned marketers on this continent, to be very thoughtful about our informal economy, as the guys just told you just now, to also think about the fact that because of our access issues, such as data, electricity, financial services, etc. It's so important for us to be very broad and very understanding of the mass impact that our brands have, that not just our brands have, but also that purposeful work can do in the space. So what I would like to do now, and that's if we're ready with that, is to be able to look at some of the lessons we've learned in understanding diversity and culture, and to someone who's learned a few good lessons of his own recently when it comes to diversity and culture is the global CEO of VMLY&R, John Cook.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say, first of all, thanks for being part of Live from the Edge. Wonderful event, and Jared, I'm appreciative of not only you and the team pulling this together, but inviting me to say a few words here at the end. And I'm sure everybody's got a little fatigue from what's hopefully been a really energizing last couple hours, and I'm honored to offer a few words. And it's our job to work with brands to create cultural resonance, cultural relevance, both those things. Not an easy job, and especially hard right now. I think everybody as part of this conference is some level of marketer or operating with brands or entrusting brands in whatever form that takes. We're all doing that. And I'm one of those people. And what I wanted to do today is just share a little bit about my views on everything that's happening from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint. It's something that none of us are an expert on, and nobody has all the answers to. But I think by sharing out what we're seeing, we can learn. And I thought I'd do a little bit of that. Interesting, I'm sharing from Kansas City, Missouri, which is right in the middle of the United States. And so in many ways, I feel like there's so much to learn with everything that you've experienced in South Africa through the years. We're probably a little behind in the dialogue that we've had here in the US, but still let me offer some points. The first observation I've had is you know, we're in the middle of a firestorm, to state the obvious. Pandemic, economic recession, social injustice, just everything happening, and that's on top of the natural disasters that hit us anyway. Those things certainly don't slow down. We're in the middle of a big one here in the United States. But what's become clear is with all that happening, you just can't judge on any Zoom meeting that we're on when somebody's having a particularly bad day. It's a given that on any given day when you're in one of those meetings, somebody is having the effect of one of those major impacts in their life. And I think it just means that we all need to be that much more sensitive, that much more supportive of one another, that much more inclusive. The time to be more inclusive is now. The second thing I want to talk about is a debate I've been having back and forth in my brain a little bit. And as fellow leaders and marketers, I'm sure you've had some of these same debates yourself. And that's that debate between how much do you say you're doing and how much are you actually doing. And just to set up that a little bit, at VMLY&R, the debate is how much do you do and how much do you say about what you're doing? And it's a harder question than it sits on the surface, because one would say, well, of course you'd report it all out. But there's a danger of, as you report things externally, those things seeming like grandstanding, those seeming like you're checking boxes. And what I found in the debate is that at the end of the day, people want to be communicated with. They want to see those actions. And so some of my instincts have been not to communicate externally at times. Some of those instincts have been not to relay everything internally that we're doing. Some of that stuff is quite personal. But at the end of the day, communicating and communicating even more. Another thing on my mind has been the idea that as you take those actions, these actions of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as a leader, any sort of leader that each of us are, you're going to get criticism, you're going to get friction, there's going to be more tension as you put more texture out there. I think that's completely okay. I was initially resistant to that because nobody wants to be criticized. But what I found, and I'm hoping and guessing you're seeing the same thing, is the more you put yourself out there and try to take action, as long as your heart is in the right place, then it's worth taking those actions and working through the criticism, as long as you're okay with taking that criticism in and doing something with it. I had a big example earlier this year. We had our annual meeting, thousands of people in one meeting, and I was talking about our efforts in DE&I. And I mentioned, I dream of a day that there wouldn't be a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. Dreamed of a day when programming wasn't labeled as diversity programming. And what I meant and how I was heard were two different things. I meant I wanted it all to be just at the core of our company, and we didn't need to label things that way. The way it came off to some was that those things weren't important, or diversity or some groups weren't as important. And I got some fantastic feedback about that in a very fair way. And I think my initial reaction could be to be defensive, and I wasn't that way. And I was glad I wasn't, because I took it in, understood the feedback, and it led to great dialogue. And I just would encourage everybody to do those things, to take that feedback. Don't stop putting yourself out there with fear of the feedback or the criticism, as long as you're willing to take action. Thank you very much for having me and for letting me say a few words. I hope to see you in person next time.
Yeah.
So I've been asked to do a freestyle on today's theme. So I'm just going to try and try to flip a couple of things from the top of my head, which is particularly what I'm famous for. I'm the Lazarus Man, by the way. Cool, let's see what we got. Hold on, I'm still buffering. These are the languages and speeches of things that we attach to being African, and sometimes be African and black, because we move through diasporas, through languages, we spore out and find things, because these Black Panthers are still black, and yet they will still attack. It's the quickness of the mind, the slickness of the tongue, the movement of the feet that even affects the countries that we cannot even simultaneously defeat. But this is what it means to be African and black, to move forward and lay stacks, to do things that we like and come back and attack, because these Black Panthers stay black, and they will always attack, because these are the languages, the feet that crawl, the stanzas that maul, the minds that ask for some more. This is what it means from the beating drums to what you like, to a dish, to a plate, to a language, to a time, to a moment in a place. What it feels like to be African is amazing. And that's what I got to say about that. Peace.